And we are live, Rangers and overall hockey fans. Thank you guys so much for chiming in to the live stream or on replay, wherever you get your podcast for Rangers Review episode 45. My apologies to everyone that's in here in the live stream a couple minutes late. Unfortunately, that happens at times given our hectic schedules. But we have planned to get into this episode, a very positive episode for us Ranger fans, as the Rangers, they have won their past couple games. And Steven, unfortunately, does claim the belt, even though that, yes, if you guys know the drill with these episodes, we give our predictions at the end of the episode for the upcoming schedule for the next couple of games till we record again. And I picked the Rangers to go 1-0-1 over their next couple games. They went 2-0, and Steven went 0-1-1. But because of how we made it where if neither of us have the correct record, we do it by goal differential, and he had the higher in goals because he picked at least 5 goals scored. I picked at least 4. Rangers ended up scoring 6, and they only surrendered 2. So, Steven, you have the title, but by no means do you deserve it. Let's be honest here. You didn't even have them picking at least 1 win. But it is what it is. We got plenty to get into. I'm excited about it. Going over these past couple games, that being games 38 and 39. To be exact for the Rangers, we'll be sharing our quick recap on those, our overall reactions as well to Rangers having Gerard Gallant back and getting some other players back. Really, most of the guys from the protocol list now. And now, really, the only one that's still out is Alexis Lafreniere. And talking also about Braden Schneider's debut and what a debut that was. We'll be getting into that shortly and plenty more. So shout out all you guys. If you're listening in the live stream, we'll be taking some questions towards the end of the episode. So make sure to stay tuned for that. And wherever you get your podcast, guys, thank you so much for chiming in. But Steven, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I won the belt back. So yeah, I don't care how much you value that or not. It's like the Steelers winning Super Bowl 45. Or was it 50? I don't even know. I think it was 50. Sorry. The Steelers
it's
winning
okay.
Super Bowl 50 against, or was it 40? I don't even know. The one where they played the Seahawks and they got all these pass interference calls going in their favor. Doesn't matter.
Is someone still upset about that Super Bowl when Matt Hasselbeck as your QB? Trust me, it was not a QB clinic, to put it lightly.
No. Well, let's not get into this.
Okay.
I won the belt and you didn't, so that's all that matters. On top of that, the Rangers go 2-0. So what's there to complain about? I'm a little bit upset that you get to recap the Sharks game though, but I'll let it slide for now.
Yeah, if for those that aren't aware, I'll be recapping the Sharks game a little bit because the Flyers game, I was able to watch all the highlights, but I wasn't able to watch it live, unfortunately, because for those that don't know, I live closer to Philly than I do New York City, and because of that, I get all the games blacked out, Philly-related by me. It's really annoying. It is what it is, though. So, yes, that's why I want to hear more of your in-depth analysis about that game outside of what I saw in the highlights, everything that I could see to this point. But let's get into it now. Let's talk about this game. Also, a big shout out to Yona, who's a great supporter on the channel with a $2 donation. Hyped in the chat, the pod live again. Yes, thank you so much for that, my friend. Really appreciate it. Also, shout out to our good friend in Hot Take Hockey, that being John. John is a great hockey content creator. Make sure to check him out. Subscribe to him if you haven't already, folks. He's excited because his Maple Leafs play the New York Rangers tonight, that being Wednesday, January 19th at the time of recording this. It's a big one. I'm excited for that one, too. But like I said, let's get into these games, folks. Let's talk about this Sharks game. This was the final game of the West Coast trip before the Rangers then went to Philly. And
thank God.
Thank God, indeed. Yes, Steven, who lives in Dublin, Ireland, for those that aren't aware, has been having to watch these games right around 3:30 in the morning, just as anyone would want to, right? So Steven hasn't been too happy about that. Neither have I. I mean, those late games aren't fun. Some of them I was able to do just fine working all day and then checking that out late at night, but they're still a little rough at times. So once you get to the third period, depending on how the pace of the game is going, I'm not feeling too hot. I will say that much. But talking about hot, that has been the Rangers at least over these couple games now, and big win, massive win for them against the Sharks team that's been playing above expectations at times this season, and the Rangers win this one, and the guys just kept producing. The guys that you expect for the Rangers to produce were doing exactly that, and it started off in the first period, as we all know by now. Rangers were in their zone. It was a start of a power play for the San Jose Sharks. And then a nice play off the faceoff by Kreider to bring up the puck to Zibanejad. Zibanejad along the right side. Kreider creates a nice 2-on-1, giving his speed with ease. Kreider's right in the slot there, and he gets himself a goal. We looked right around 5-hole on Hill, just squeaked through, and that was Kreider's 22nd of the year. Yes, this guy's getting close to 30 already. It's insane. 21 assists rate for Zibanejad on the year, that him with an apple, and Fox was 32nd assist. The Rangers then go on to the second period. Sharks, neither of them score. Rangers had some very good chances in this game, though, including Kreider, who had a almost sure goal right in front, did a little nice forehand backhand, was not able to get it past Hill, however, so they continued to the third period, and this is where, yes, Braden Schneider making his NHL debut, something that both Steve and I were a little surprised by. When Schneider was drafted, I thought, okay, I do think that he's going to be NHL ready within a couple of years. You were more along the stance of, okay, 3 to 4 really makes more sense for Schneider. And rightfully so. Normally, defensemen take a little bit longer to develop, but the Rangers are not really feeling confident just yet with a Zach Jones, with a Niels Lundqvist. They ended up bringing up Braden Schneider, and then lo and behold, he plays in his first game in the West Coast trip and gets himself his first NHL goal in his first game, which is great to see. Right in the beginning of the third period, a nice little drop back pass from Strome. He just snipes it. He had no clue where he was shooting. He said he was just trying to get on net and went in, had a nice little sell. He's so pumped for Schneider. He looked awfully impressive in this game that we'll be deep diving further in the episode. That's going to really be the highlight of this episode, Braden Schneider and his immediate impact. But his first of the season, in his first game for the Rook, assisted by Ryan Strome, his 19th apple of the year, and Hedel was 7th apple. And we'll be talking about Hedel a little bit because he's been surprising a little bit lately for positive reasons, not negative, which is honestly a great thing to say. And then the Rangers capped off this win thanks to, yes, a Chris Kreider empty net for his 23rd of the year, assisted by Rooney for his 3rd apple of the year. And the big story of this game wasn't just Chris Kreider, wasn't just Braden Schneider. It was the highlight reel saves left and right made by Igor Shesterkin. What a performance for Igor. A 37 save shutout. This guy, look, it doesn't matter how long he's been out. He's going to come back in there. He's going to ride for you. And just like that, the Rangers get another massive win with Igor. Pardon me. Lost my voice for a second. With Igor at the pipe. So huge win for the Rangers. They got outshot 37-31, but that didn't phase them. They got out face-off 51 to 49%. So close face-off percentage. I like that. Neither of them scored on the power play. Hits favored the Rangers 21-11. Blocks favored the Rangers 14-11, and giveaways favored the Rangers 6-9. So, Steven, what was your initial reaction to this Sharks game? Because this was a massive one. I mean, to finish the West Coast trip like this, especially, and after not having that good game in Vegas, of course, and then doing well in that Anaheim game, having some ups and downs, losing to the Canes in a game that they really should have won. It just looked like that they were losing some pieces, but getting guys back from the COVID list to this point has definitely looked like it's helping this team. So what's your take on this victory over the Sharks?
Well, it reminded me a lot of the game against the Anaheim Ducks in that the Rangers played a very complete game. They were able to build some sustained pressure. And this has been my criticism, as many of you know, the entire season. The Rangers often lack the ability to put the pressure on in the offensive zone, enter the zone, get a couple of shots on goal, not just get one shot on net and then have it be a glove save or have the opposition clear the zone immediately. No, this game, like the Anaheim Ducks game, the Rangers were able to create sustained pressure in the offensive zone for more than 10 seconds, and that is how you win games. That is how you tire out your opponent, and that is how you, at the end of the game, how you have more left in the tank and win those games. And the Schneider goal was a perfect example because that was the result of sustained pressure, just like the Tenorti goal and the Lindgren goal against the Anaheim Ducks. And Schneider getting his first goal was great. I mean, third youngest defenseman to ever score on his debut for the Rangers. But that's an amazing stat on its own. But to me, what really stands out is Ryan Strome, because Ryan Strome assisted on 5 first-ever NHL goals in his career and 4 as a Ranger. I looked this up. Libor Hayek's first goal, Kaapo Kakko's first goal, Ryan Lindgren's first goal, and now Braden Schneider's first goal. So the guy he assisted on his first goal on before joining the Rangers was Brian Strait. So he assisted on goals of players that you don't really expect to score goals aside from Kaapo Kakko. But this guy just does it all. The last player to assist on 4 first-ever NHL goals as a Ranger was Sean Avery in 2010 and 2011.
Shad's my boy Sean. Love him or hate him, I've always been on the love it side.
Yeah. And Sean Avery, I looked that up too for you guys. His assists on first NHL goals were on the first of Michael Sauer, Derek Stepan, Ryan Callahan, and Artem Anisimov. So it goes back to like 2008. So yeah, very impressive. And looking into that even further, the Ranger with the most assists on first NHL goals, of course, is Brian Leach. I don't think anyone's surprised there, with 11. Shared in second place is Rod Gilbert and Walt Kazak with 8. And then there's Brian Hextall, Andy Bathgate, Don Raleigh, and Paul Ronte with 7. So there's quite a few players still ahead of Ryan Strome. But if he sticks with the Rangers for another couple of years, with all these young kids coming up, he can get a couple more of these. And yeah, I think Ryan Strome really shows his value here. He may not be a first line center. He may not be the guy that you build your team around, but in that secondary tier of value, I think Ryan Strome is a really good guy to have around.
Well said. No, we've been on the Ryan Strome train for a bit now.
And I did it again during the game. I mentioned the word shutout with 5 minutes to go.
Steven, you're just a piece of shit. Like, I've established this by now. There's nothing else that needs to be said on the jinxing front. All right. If you are actually a normal human being, you do not do or say the things that Steven does on a night-to-night basis when the Rangers play.
I did it again.
That needs to be said.
You got it again. There was no jinx. The Rangers got the shutout. Shesterkin got the shutout. And most importantly, with Shesterkin, let me get that number up because I had that here too. So through the first 69 career games of NHL goalies, Igor Shesterkin ranks second in save percentage, behind only Ken Dryden. So
that's fantastic.
That's something that's definitely interesting to mention. Yeah. Rangers win. Rangers go 2-1 on the California trip. I think that's better than most fans expected because the California trip is always difficult for the Rangers. So getting 2 wins out of 3, that's something you take any day.
Absolutely. Now let's pivot to the game that I unfortunately was not able to watch live.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for lack of effort. So
yeah, Rangers come back east. Don't go home quite yet. They'll play home against Toronto tonight, of course, but their first game back in the Eastern time zone is in Philadelphia against the Flyers. And they start off great. There was all this talk before the game about Chris Knobloch, but, he wasn't behind the bench because Gallant was cleared to resume his duties. But that didn't stop Mika Zibanejad from doing what he does best. Mika Zibanejad scoring against the Flyers. First goal of the game on the power play after 5 minutes. Assisted by Adam Fox and Artemi Panarin. And it was since joining the Rangers in 2010, Zibanejad ranks 3rd in the league in goals against the Flyers behind only David Pastrnak and Sidney Crosby. So Mika Zibanejad definitely has something on the Flyers. Whenever he plays that team, something's going on with him.
He's been the Flyers' daddy for a hot minute now.
Yeah, last season, of course, we had that 9-0 and that 8-3 game, I think.
Huge games.
And one of those games, he had 6 points in one period, which is a franchise record.
Insane.
And that was absolutely insane. Yes. But unfortunately, the Rangers didn't go into the first intermission with the lead. Oscar Lindblom, assisted by Travis Konechny and Scott Laughton, tied it up. And then in the second period, if you did not watch the game and you would have asked me what should I skip on my rewatch, I would have said the second period because aside from 2 penalties, one on Kevin Hayes and one on Keandre Miller, nothing of note happened at all in that period. But then you get to the third period, and the Flyers come out a little bit better than the Rangers. They really seem like they're into it. And then it's a first career NHL goal against the Rangers because that's what happens by a guy named York. So you couldn't have wrote it any better. I always say it's the easiest bet you can make in Vegas. A rookie player scoring their first NHL goal against the Rangers, and rookie goaltenders getting a shutout against us. Those are the 2 easiest bets you can make in Vegas.
You couldn't have expected the Rangers to only score over this trip with a rookie defenseman in his first season? Could you? Of course,
No,
it had to be the other way around. You
of
know,
course it has to be the other way
it's
around.
got we got to make ends meet here. You know.
But to have a guy named York score his first against the Rangers, that's
Of course.
just rubbing salt
And
in
of
the
course,
wound.
he's a redhead too, because all Flyers draft
Yeah.
picks seem to be a redhead of
And
some
I think
nature.
he also plays with number 45, so him and Schneider have that in common.
That's true. And they also have in common with today's episode.
There you go. So we'll get to that in a minute.
Yep.
If people want to think of players with number 45, they know at least one. There's one they're going to think they know, but it doesn't really count, but we'll get into that at the end. Anyway, Flyers go up 2-1 after about 10 minutes in the third, but it doesn't last long. 30 seconds later, Filipino, assisted by Panarin and Strome,
Great setup.
ties it up 2-2. And then near the end, a couple of minutes later, in the later half of the third period, who else but Chris Kreider with his 24th goal of the season and another assist by Adam Fox and an assist by Capo Caco. And I'll say something about this Capo Caco secondary assist, because not usually you don't really pay attention to secondary assists, because most of the time they are just a lateral pass that doesn't really contribute to the goal. But in this case, Capo Caco goes behind the net, skates past the net, and then passes it up, bounces off the boards, passes it to Fox, who then shoots, and Kreider scores off a redirection. I think that's one of the best examples you'll ever see of a secondary assist actually leading to a goal. But yeah, the Rangers win it 3-2. The Rangers going 26-10-4, I think. Is that their record now?
Rangers are 25-10-4.
Sorry, 25-10-4. So 39 games into the season, almost a halfway point. Their numbers are racking up. They're having a really solid season. And, I think this needs to be said. Morgan Barron, he is over 60% on faceoffs so far this season.
He's 66. Am I mistaken?
66% on faceoffs. Incredible. This team has been struggling on faceoffs for over a decade. And in comes his rookie. He played, how many games did he play last season? Like 5?
It was only a handful.
Yeah, in comes his rookie, and he's just winning two out of 3 faceoffs every time he steps on the ice. And that's just incredible. If there's one thing I would copy and paste from Morgan Barron to our other centers, it's his ability to win faceoffs. If the Rangers can somehow improve that with the rest of their center core, I think we are a much better team, because a lot of the times the Rangers are on the back foot or the Rangers are under pressure. It's because they lose faceoffs they should be winning.
And speaking of faceoffs, if you look at these past couple games, at least they've been right around 50%. This game against Philly in particular, 50 and 50 apiece. Rangers had multiple games over this away trip where they had those same exact numbers, and they got outshot by one. It was 28-27 in favor of the Flyers. But the Rangers, again, executing on the power play. Thank you, Mika Zibanejad. That was just such a stereotypical Mika Zibanejad power play goal. And that's what you and I were preaching heavily last episode, how, Panarin being back, that's fine. Just keep Panarin out of the way. Mika having the success, being on the trend he's been on in that left dot. I really like what I'm seeing from Mika from there. If it ain't broke, why fix it, right? So just leave him there. He's having success. Great goal to start things off in that one against the Flyers. Hits Flyers, out hit the Rangers 33-23, even though Reeves was back, which is good. Blocks, Rangers had more than the Flyers, 18-15, and giveaways favor the Rangers 7-9. So to really just recap these past couple games for the Rangers, they're just getting it done. And as you alluded to in the Sharks game, there were similarities again in the sense of just being a more well-rounded team. Having Gallant back, having a lot of these key contributors back in the lineup is a big deal for this team that, right now they're 15 games above 500. And I feel like it kind of hasn't settled in yet. I don't know. There's been something about this team this year where, they're tippity top of the list. They're tied in points with Carolina for most of the Metro. They're currently second, though, because they have 3 more games played than Carolina. But, I feel like the Rangers they haven't even been remotely close on the same level since they started this rebuild. They're on another level right now and getting consecutive wins. And I don't know. I just feel like maybe I'm in the minority here, but I feel like as a diehard Rangers fan, it just hasn't kicked in fully yet. There's something about it. I'm not sure why. And I think it's a good thing, though, because they've been so good. They've been so consistent, even though that, yes, the consistency hasn't been necessarily to the liking that we would want as fans every game of the year. As you and I have both said plenty, it's not necessarily about winning. It's about how you win, right? It's that context is key in everything in life, especially with how are you going to continue to win hockey games. But they're showing more often in these previous matchups as well that they're getting the job done. And even some of the losses that they're having, it's losses where you have more to say about the Rangers' lack of effort, knowing that they strictly need to, say, tweak things about their game versus saying that, oh, they just got completely outplayed. So I think that's a positive. When you are in the way of yourself, meaning that you are your worst enemy, that means that, yes, you really are on a level that's proving that, yeah, as long as everything's clicking full cylinders, as long as that group is healthy for the most part, you're going to continue to have success. And we're seeing more and more of that. And again, another very strong game that we saw here from Igor Shesterkin, 25 and 27 saves in Philly. He just continues to be dominant right now. And when you look at the Rangers as a whole over these past couple of games, look at the goal scoring. Chris Kreider just doesn't stop scoring goals. This guy already is 24. The most Kreider has had in his career. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I do believe it's 28, right?
28, yeah. Yeah.
So he has 20. He has 24. He's 4 away from his career high, tying it. 3 goals over his past 2 games. Pardon me. He leads the Rangers in that column point-wise. Adam Fox.
So that's one of the things that really stands out to me. When the schedule got harder, Kreider didn't stop scoring.
Exactly. He didn't go on that long slump.
I've always said after the second Blackhawks game in early December, the schedule was going to get a lot harder. And since that game, the Rangers have played 15 games, and they are 8-6-1, which is still good, but it's not as – I mean, that's not the same kind of record as you see for the entire season so far. So there is a little bit of caution, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. By no means am I jumping for joy saying we're winning it all this season.
The schedule got harder as we predicted. And as a result, our record has slightly decreased. We are still 25-10-4, I think.
Yep.
Like overtime losses don't really count because it's 1 point you get for one game. So in terms of calculating how many games you are over or under 500, those games don't count. But so the Rangers are 15 games over 500, but over the last 15 games, they're only 8-6-1. So that's something to keep in mind. That doesn't mean that the Rangers will not overcome this. I mean, players get better. Players get more comfortable. We've had rookie players on this team. We just went through a couple of weeks where we were missing players through COVID, and it was terrible. So it'll get better. And I'm convinced that this is a playoff team. How this team will do in the playoffs will probably depend on how we do at the deadline. And with the way we're playing now, I'm pretty much convinced that Drury will be a buyer at the deadline.
He will, but let's wait your tongue for 1 second before we get to that part, because I do want to talk a little bit in today's episode about that. Before we go there, I just want to talk about development of these players and guys that are starting to stand up a little bit more. And let's give, a nod of appreciation to Philip Hedl, first and foremost. Hedl, who had 2 points in the past 2 games, also is on a very low-key 4-game point streak. You wouldn't think that when you think Philip Hedl, but look at how he's progressed with being on the wing. It kind of proves you that, yeah, Hedl on the wing is looking like it's making more sense, at least as of late, than it is at the faceoff dot. And then when you're looking at other production, of course, Mika Zibanejad is still killing it. He had himself 2 points over the past 2 games, including a goal and assist. Panarin, who looked fantastic from everything I saw for him in the Philly game, had himself 2 apples. Adam Fox, 3 assists over the past 2 games, and Ryan Strome, 2 assists over the past 2 games. So the production's been there, but especially with those younger guys like Hedl, I wanted to know for a second, from your stance, what has your outlook been on someone like him, who we have rightfully critiqued plenty this year? It's nice to see him kind of get in a groove. And he's not the only one with a point streak. Mika Zibanejad is on a 5-game point streak as well. A little sneaky, but Mika's been so hot for a while now, I feel like. But Hedl's that big surprise. So What's your take on him right now? And then kind of transitioning then into what you were alluding to regarding how the Rangers are going to go about potentially addressing this roster come the trade deadline.
Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, Zibanejad is on pace for 12 goals in the month of January, which would be the second highest in franchise history in the month of January if he gets there.
What month is he? I'm trying to think. Zibanejad, didn't he have? Was it? Shoot,
I think it was March.
March. It was March a couple of years
ago.
ago. Yep.
But that included the 5-goal game.
Mm-hmm.
And last season it included the 6-point game in one period. So those games really inflate his average. But what's interesting to me is that last season Zibanejad really heated up at the 30% mark of the season, and he did the same thing this season.
Yep.
But yeah, moving on to Hedel. I've been saying this for years, and I watched Hedel before he got drafted. I had the pleasure of living close enough to him that I could watch him a couple of times. He always played on the wing, and he always played really well on the wing. And then when he was drafted by the Rangers, he was forced into a center role. But every time he was playing for the Czech national team in the Euro Hockey Tour, he was playing on the wing again. And that's where he played his best games. And I know that Hedel might want to play center because it's the more prestigious position in hockey, just like the number 10 spot in soccer is the spot you want to play, or being a quarterback in football. But if you're not good enough to play in that position, then you're just not good enough. And this happened to other players in the past too. Look at JT Miller. JT Miller wanted to play center, and it just didn't work out. And then he moved to the wing, and then he became a point per game player. I think there's still a future for Hedel in New York. If he can, over the next couple of weeks, if he can really show what he can do on the wing, I think there's still a future for him. But it might be too late, because we might already be in a situation where Hedel and also Patrick Nemeth have to be moved to generate cap space. And if Drury really wants to go for it at the deadline, and if he wants to acquire a center, it makes a lot of sense to move Hedel in one of those trades. Let's say you go after a guy like JT Miller, for instance. The piece they would want back is a first-round pick, definitely, and then a good young player. Now, the Rangers, we already know this. They aren't trading their defensemen, because those defensemen are off limits for Jack Eichel. So what you're left with is Kravtsov and Hedel. And for another team, center always makes more sense. And they still see him as a center, just like the Rangers still see him as a center. So we'll see what happens. But I am impressed with how he's performed the last couple of weeks, and he has been producing the last 4 games. So that's great. Let's see if he can keep this up, because as we all know from experience, Hedel's hot streaks usually end after 5 or 6 games.
Yeah. Normally he just has this ridiculous tear where he's looking like, a top 6 player, and then he just goes
remember a
back
couple of
to,
years
you don't
ago,
even know where he went.
And during that tear, he had that amazing goal against the Bruins where he knocked out Tuukka Rask.
Yep.
And I think he had like 5 goals in 6 games that stretch. And everyone was like, okay, this is it. This is his breakthrough. And then nothing. It's frustrating as fans, because we so desperately want one of our forwards to work out.
Yeah, no, you're right. Especially when you look at how the Rangers have went about this rebuild. It's been forward heavy more than anything. The defensemen are finally starting to come into the reins, but Adam Fox wasn't part of the rebuild in the sense of we drafted him and we took the time to develop him. He was a guy that was basically ready to go as soon as we traded for him. Ryan Lindgren, again, you still had to trade to acquire him at the end of the day when he's someone that was already getting started in his young development. So when you look at what the Rangers have done drafting-wise, Elias Anderson, Philip Hedel, Capo Caco, Alexis Lafreniere, how many of those have really been like, wow, okay, like this is a big deal? None of them so far. And again, the reasons vary.
Games.
Pardon?
the only first round pick that has really stood out is Braden Schneider, but it has only been 2 games. So
Exactly.
it's
It's easy. It's easy for a first round pick to stand out when he's had such a small sample size. And
yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
want to discuss Schneider here in a second with you because I'm curious to hear what your take has been on him versus Jones and Niels when they first had their games for the Rangers this year. But
Mm.
before we get there, again, when you look at the Rangers and their development, something as a young fan for myself, I've always been wanting to see the Rangers have that homegrown guy. It's there's a different feeling for it. I got that taste with Chris Kreider back a decade ago, and I haven't looked back. That was such an amazing feeling for the Rangers to have a top talent come in playoffs right away and just dominate the way that he did. You have other guys that really had their hot streaks at times, whether it be a Carl Hagelin. You can make an argument for Zuccarello, even though that he wasn't drafted from Norway. We know that story. But for me, that first real guy other than Kreider was Pavel Buchnevich. And right when Buch was finally hitting his prime, the Rangers parted with him because they felt that he's not someone that they'll be able to have a future with, given the money that they're dealing with, which understandably so, again, wasn't a good trade at all. But I understand the reasons as to why the Rangers were looking to part with him. Now, here we have a situation where another guy that I really liked a lot prior, Anthony Duclair, same thing. They parted with him early. And Duclair, who's been up and down in his career, has been more consistent in recent years in a nice spot with Florida, and I'm happy for him. Point being is that the Rangers have yet to establish themselves when they've had numerous opportunities of drafting young, high-profile forwards. And I do think we're going to see the best out of Alexi Lafreniere, as we were. I really was liking what I was seeing from his game lean up until he unfortunately got on the COVID list. Capo Caco, who has not stood out that much to me in a little bit now, unfortunately. I still see him taking the body really well and so hard to get off the puck, just waiting for that point production to really start to hit that next level. I'm not concerned with them, but yes, they have been underwhelming at times, and the Rangers as a whole have with developing these forwards. But outside of forwards, defensively, Rangers historically have done a great job for a bit now. My entire life as a Ranger fan, they have been kicking it like no tomorrow with young defensemen. Whether it's a young Mark Stahl, a young Dan Girardi, a young Ryan McDonough. Now looking at the new age, of course, not just in Adam Fox, but Ryan Lindgren. And now you have these new kids. And with the newest kid on the block and Braden Schneider, again, Steven, what has your take been on him? Because from what I saw in that San Jose game, looked like a kid who was really excited to be there, who was throwing his body really well, and just looked comfortable. He did not look like someone that was out of place. And that's something that you normally see with a lot of players making their debut. And in the Philly game, from everything that I saw, he looked fine. I don't love him paired with Nemeth whatsoever. I think that's going to be a detriment to his success and personal development. But, need I say more? So what's your take on Braden Schneider and how he has compared in his very short sample size versus the other two young defensemen that have hit the NHL this season?
Yeah, I think the most noticeable thing about Braden Schneider is also what coaches love in the NHL, and that's that he's big. He doesn't shy away from contact. But what really stands out to me is that he doesn't seem afraid to make mistakes. Whereas when you see Lundqvist and Jones, they are a little bit cautious. They don't want to be caught in a position where they're overpowered or where their play leads to a turnover. Whereas Braden Schneider plays with the confidence of an NHL defenseman. I wish K'Andre Miller played the way Braden Schneider plays, because he has that frame and he just doesn't use it to the point that Schneider uses it.
It's crazy that you even said that, given Schneider's only played 2 games, but there's only been very few games where I feel that I've seen Miller exemplify a confidence in his game that we saw from Schneider, right from the jump.
Yeah. And when you look at Schneider, the first game, of course, his performance is elevated by scoring that goal. That doesn't mean that he was bad. It just means that he had a decent game, and because of the goal, people think he was amazing. And I don't think he was as amazing where you go, okay, he didn't do anything wrong. There's still lessons to be learned here, and it's still a guy who only played 2 games in the NHL and only played, I think, 25 games at the pro level. So we'll see what happens in the coming games, because we've seen this all too often, where a player starts off with a good couple of games and then falls off a cliff. So if Schneider can keep this up for another 10 games, let's say, then I think it's going to look really good on him. And yeah, the next couple of weeks are going to be integral because he's going to play at Madison Square Garden, and he's going to be part of, the whole vibe in New York, and then traveling from New York elsewhere, and I think in a way making your debut on a road trip actually takes off some of the pressure for a kid like Schneider.
Yeah, I think it absolutely does. It's not like it's easy to just waltz in Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena, and think, oh, no pressure. If I'm being quite frank, just in my personal opinion, as someone who is not Braden Schneider at all, I would prefer to have my debut with a team like the San Jose Sharks, like in San Jose, something like
And
that makes a
yeah,
lot more
and
sense.
and this is not a Rangers thing, or this is not a Madison Square Garden thing. But think about this. You're 18 years old, you get drafted by, let's pick a random NHL team, the Nashville Predators, right?
Sure.
You get drafted by the Nashville Predators at age 18. They invite you to their prospect camp. They give you a tour of the arena, the Bridgestone Arena, which is actually a really nice arena, by the way. If people haven't been to Nashville yet, put it on your bucket list. It's a great experience to go to a hockey game. So you get this tour of Bridgestone Arena, where you get to go into all the lounges and all the suites, and you do this whole tour where you get to see all these things behind the scenes, and you get to go into the locker room before you were even an NHL player. Now, fast forward 2, 3 years, you're under contract, you get called up from the minors, and you walk into that same stadium. That stadium where you walked in as an 18-year-old and you were like, oh, wow. And now all of a sudden you're there as a player. That's going to hit you in a way, regardless of what the arena is, regardless of what the team you're playing for is. Because at a younger age, a couple of years prior, you walked into that arena as just a kid. And now you walk back into that arena as a player that goes out there on the ice. And I think that puts some extra pressure on a player. So if as an 18 or 19 or 20 or 21-year-old kid, you get to make your NHL debut away from home in a road game, yeah, I do think that takes the pressure off a little bit.
I tend to agree with you for sure. And again, it's not like playing at MSG or with the Rangers as debut is by no mean an easy thing. Yes, these kids are professionals, but it's like anything else. It's a lot of pressure. It's a big deal. And I think that's something that gets so overlooked by fans in a nutshell when you're, especially if you're a fan of every single sports team in New York, whether it's, football, Giants or Jets, right? Baseball, Mets, Yankees, hockey, the story there, etc.
Mm.
Point being is that this is a big effing market. This is a big deal. And there's always constant pressure more than you would get basically anywhere else in this country. So to suggest that everything's going to be smooth sailing right away isn't always the case. And I think the more fans are wary of that understanding of the pressure that's automatically on their shoulders, not even just for rookies, but for any player that first comes in New York. It's a good thing to understand because it is very much a reality with a lot of players who have that adjustment period. And there are players that there are plenty that even don't develop well or feel that they can't thrive because they just can't handle it. I think JT Miller is a great example. If you know Miller's story from everything that I've seen, Miller was someone where, I think you talked to me about this too, where he would go out, he would have that more of that party lifestyle when he was with the Rangers. He'd be out late at the bar after games, really not focusing on himself because as a young man, when you're introduced to this lavish lifestyle, it's easy to get caught up away in it. So then when he went from Tampa and then Tampa to Vancouver, that's really where he had a change of heart because the style was completely different there. He had no incentive, no reason to go out and do the silly things that he was previously doing on game night, especially. He kind of just honed in and finally woke up and realized that, I'm determined as ever to just focus on hockey. This is what I'm here for. And I love that about JT. I'm so happy that he's figured himself out. But he's he's one of many examples of players that, it's kind of, you have your positives, but you can definitely have your negatives when you're in a big market, big city like this. But
True.
before we
Yeah.
go any further, I want to ask you, are there any significant prospect updates of recent that you would like to share with us?
Well, it's more of the same, to be honest. It's the big three. Brennan Othman, Ryder Korczak, Brett Berard. They're just playing really well. But the one guy I want to mention that I haven't talked about a lot in recent weeks is Brody Lamb. Um, Brody Lamb had a slow start to the season. I think he had 3 goals in his first 30 games, and then he followed it up with 7 goals in his last 10. So he's been like stepping it up a little bit in the USHL for the Green Bay Gamblers, and I think that's a really good thing. This is a kid that's his rights only expire in 5 years, so they have no rush at all with this kid. And this was a 4th round pick, high upside, one of the youngest players in his draft class. So for him to show this type of talent at the next level, going from high school hockey to the USHL, that's a good thing. Um, but yeah, most notably, Brandon Othman. The guy scored his 26th goal last night. He is now ranked second in goals in the OHL, behind only a guy who's 2 years older than him. And I still firmly believe that he's going to be on the Rangers next season.
Othman, that's your hot take.
That's
I don't blame you. You've been following him literally since day one, and by all means, if that does come to fruition, given the circumstances, it's not necessarily just for the sake of dominating where he's been right now, but rather because of the fact that there's really no benefit for him staying in juniors,
yeah.
right?
It's like compare it a little bit to Lafreniere in his first year. There's no reason for him to play in the OHL. You've already outgrown your level there, and you're not eligible to play in the AHL. So what's the logical step then? The team basically has a choice here. Do they want him in the OHL for another year where he has nothing left to prove? Or do they burn a year off his ELC, keep him on the team in the NHL, and have him learn and develop on the team? Yes, you're burning a year off his ELC, but burning a year is not always a negative, and this is something that I think a lot of fans underestimate or just aren't aware of. Burning a year of an ELC can also be a positive because you get to sign the player to an extension a year early. You get to sign him at age 22 instead of 23.
And depending on just how good that player and their impact is right away,
Yeah,
that could be crucial.
If that player has a career year at age 22, then if you decided to not burn that year of his ELC, all of a sudden you're going to look at a much bigger number to extend him. So, and of course, this is all theoretical. We never know which players are going to be that kind of player, but it's not always a given that burning a year off of an entry-level contract is a bad thing. And I think the Rangers are really considering it at least. They hired a professional trainer to help him with the skating this season. They've already made arrangements for him to come over to Connecticut to practice with Ben Prentice and Chris Kreider and some of the other players. So, the dedication and the investment's already there from the team. It's not far-fetched to think that the team will keep him in New York. That's my take. Ryder Korzak, I think Ryder Korzak is going to sign his contract, play in Hartford next season with Will Cooley.
I agree with that take. He's doing really well.
And because, of course, Ryder Korzak was born before December 31st. So he's one of the older guys in his draft class. And because he is AHL eligible next season, unlike Brennan Othman.
Awesome.
Then there's Brett Berard, who plays in college for the Providence Friars.
Love that.
Who could turn pro at the end of the season, but he has indicated that he wants to stay another year to play with his younger brother. Now, that doesn't mean he's necessarily going to stay with his younger brother, but look at Zach Jones. Zach Jones said he fully expected to play his junior year in college. And then the Rangers approached him. They offered him a really good deal where they burned a year off his ELC, which basically means as a player, you get your signing bonus paid out twice in the span of 4 months. That can be enticing to a player, especially a player coming from college where you never made a dime playing hockey. So we'll see what happens there. Other than that, no really noteworthy performances the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, Jaden Gruby is still a little bit I think he has 1 goal in his last 20 games.
Oh, wow. Okay.
but he did have an ACL surgery over the summer, so maybe he's still, catching up after recovering from that. Yeah, and then in terms of goaltending, there's Talon Boyko and Dylan Garand in the WHL. Dylan Garand already signed, so he's going to be in Hartford or Jacksonville next year. I think Talon Boyko might stay another year in juniors.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, especially with Boyko, because I don't have a great background on him to this point. But I know that with Korzak, he's someone that I'm intrigued by. We're gonna see how he does for the remainder of this season. And of course, Brent Hoffman just leading the way. I know you've spoken so glowingly of him to this point. Those pieces are important to me. Everyone is, but the guys that I feel like are those the top tier list player wise for the Rangers that are still forwards with Hoffman, with Korzak, with Cooley, and with some other pieces too. So I'm excited. I'm very interested to see how guys also in the Wolfpack are going to continue doing Payunemi, because of course he's with the Rangers for a short time. There was some belief that maybe he was going to play in that Sharks game that transpired. No, it ended up going to the Queens native, which was really cool. I would have liked to see him with the Rangers a little bit longer. What a story. His father unfortunately had passed. I don't know exactly how long ago from post 9/11 symptoms
In
from being
2020, he passed away in 2020.
wow. Yeah, it just what a story. I mean, literally as New York as you can get,
Yeah,
especially as a hockey
yeah,
player, to come into the Rangers organization, grew up a Rangers fan.
yeah.
It's a great thing for Greco, who I've always been a fan of Greco prior to him joining the Rangers organization, because he's just been a high flyer. He's one of those guys that's a speed demon in the AHL, has been an AHL All-Star at least once, I think multiple times now, has put up some very respectable points. Just one of those guys that's kind of been in that limbo, hasn't been able to get over the hump.
Yeah.
But he looked perfectly fine. He was giving the body in the matchup for against the San Jose Sharks, and unfortunately, he was taken off the roster right after that matchup. But it was nice to see him at least get a little taste with the Rangers, and hopefully, it won't be the last time this season. Because by no means did I have an issue with what I saw from him.
No, first ever player from Queens to play for the Rangers, so that's something to be proud of.
Very cool.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna call it the way I see it. Against the Sharks, the Rangers played with 6 players who started their season in Hartford, and 5 of them were better than Greg McKegg, who is number 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been established by now. McKagan.
How Morgan Barron and Anthony Greco and Tim Gettinger and Johnny Brodzinski are not playing on the Rangers over Greg McKegg, I just don't understand. I just don't get it.
It's that very stereotypical veteran. That's all that is. It happens every single year, Steven. We know that by now. We shouldn't say we don't get it, because we do get it.
It doesn't get less frustrating though.
I can agree it doesn't get less frustrating, but by no means should you be surprised. Okay, if we're surprised by a player getting consistent ice time that maybe shouldn't be, then by all means, don't even be a hockey fan.
I've been through years where we played Chris Newberry and Daryl Poe and Aaron Asham, and this was a washed-up Aaron Asham, not New York Islanders or Pittsburgh Penguins Aaron Asham. Brandon Machinter and Ben Ferrero and Matt Pumple.
Steven, I think you said some names in there that actually are going to help me for today's episode.
Oh, shit. Yes. Sorry about that. No, yeah. I guess I made it a little easier for you today.
All right, keep going.
No. I'm good. I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done naming fourth liners because yeah. No,
okay.
But it's just it would be nice to have a coach that really trusts younger players for once, because I think Morgan Barron's ready.
I think Morgan Barron's ready too. Yeah. I think that he should continue to stay on this club.
Could you give me 1 minute? I'll be back in 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna start taking some questions while you do that. That's perfectly fine. Okay, well, Steven's gonna go and do his thing, and not like we have an episode we're recording live or anything. So I'm gonna be answering some questions during this span before we get on to the upcoming schedule for the Rangers and wrap things up with the previous players that have worn number 45. So let's get into it. I already see some questions here in the chat. Let's see. Here's Jay. How's it going, Jay? He says, Rory, do you think the Rangers keep Jones and Niels since they have such similar skill sets? I'm not sure exactly what you mean keep. Do you mean keep in the sense of not trading them? If that's what you're saying, I would say yes. I don't see the Rangers trading either of these defensemen in the near future, at least. If you're saying keep as in on the roster, well, neither of them are on the roster right now for the Rangers. They're both in Hartford. So yeah, I know that Schneider's the only one currently with the Rangers that's playing. I do expect the Rangers to have one of Jones and Neal's gain some more time throughout. I think the Rangers are going to kind of continue to rotate to see what works in that bottom pair of the young defensemen. But Schneider, so far, looks like that he's leading the way to get more ice time until he proves Gallant otherwise, or, inevitable things happen if other players get injured or sick or anything like that. Then that's, of course, where call-ups will be more warranted. Let's see here. Again, guys, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns as we're in the live stream, by all means, send them my way. No worries. Any realistic future draft picks that pique your interest? What do you mean by that exactly, Yona?
I know one from Finland that I'd be intrigued by if we pick late in the first round.
Oh, okay. So he's talking about potential players that we could pick, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay, then you go ahead because I have yet to deep dive the upcoming draft. I have not.
Yeah, there's been a player from Finland, although he doesn't really sound Finnish, who has been dropping in the rankings recently. And he might fall to the Rangers depending on where we get eliminated in the playoffs, depending on where he falls. But Brad Lambert.
Kind of a big deal. That's the one name I actually know, Steven.
There you go.
I've known that name for over 2 years.
Yeah. So if he drops, he would be the third Finnish player in a row to fall outside of a top 5 pick after being projected there.
Yeah, Ratty was last season, right?
And then before that, Anton Lundell.
And Lundell is the best out of those 3 as of now. It's on me otherwise.
I'm so happy I was right about Lundell. I'm so happy. I kept telling people he's a top 5 talent in his draft, and he's proving me right every time.
He was my favorite player in that draft.
Yeah, every time he's on the ice, and I got to meet him a couple of times. Super sweet kid. And I'm just happy for him. But if Brett Lambert falls that far and the Rangers have a pick where they can actually select him, that's just slam dunk pick for the Rangers. The Rangers need a player like him.
What has his development been like to potentially cause this drop?
Well, there have been a couple of injuries, but also some issues with him switching teams, which to some NHL organizations might be red flags. So he started with Lahti. Their team's called the Pelicans. And then he played for their junior team. And then he moved to IFK in Helsinki.
Okay.
And then he didn't get enough playing time there, so he went to this team called, and I really hope I pronounce this right because this is in response to a Finnish guy. Their team's name is JYP, and I'm not even gonna pronounce the city where they're from because that's even too much for me.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
Yes, but there's this player on that team. I think his name is Kemmel, who has outplayed Brad Lambert. And he's probably going to be top 5 in this draft.
Okay.
So now with his team being basically eliminated from the playoffs, his former team from Lahti, the Pelicans, they are in a playoff spot. They're struggling offensively. So he requested to have his contract terminated so he can sign with Lahti to be part of their run for the playoffs. I don't consider that a bad thing. If a player wants to chase some success early on in his career, do it while you can, because once you get to the NHL, you don't get to pick and choose where you go. So yeah, if he falls to the Rangers, that's the type of guy, especially when you draft late in the first round. If you can get a high upside pick there, you go for it. The Bruins did it with Pasternak in, I think, 2014. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Joe Veleno dropped in 2018, all the way to the end of the first round for the Red Wings. Eli Tolvanen was considered a top 3 European pick in 2017, and he fell all the way to the Nashville Predators at like I think 30th overall.
And he's finally starting to get in a rhythm in his
And
NHL career.
it's been 4.5 years, and he's finally getting there. So yeah,
Yep.
it's also a lesson that sometimes players need time. But if the Rangers really need to figure out what they want in this draft, and it's really too early to say who they're going to go for. The last couple of years, it was always easy, they're going to be like in 2019, they're going to be a top 10 pick. So here are 5 players to keep an eye out on, and then they win the draft lottery and they get Capo Caco. But if they don't win the draft lottery, you're talking about Cousins, Zegras, Podkolzin, those kind of players. So you know a little bit what to look for.
And I will say this is probably a good thing in hindsight, because when you look at how the Rangers have went development-wise so far, there's a lot of question marks. They've done really well on certain routes, and they've done underwhelming in others, and just what expectations have been to this point, and how they've been met or not. Depending on, of course, what player we're discussing, they definitely vary. So for the Rangers to kind of go back into the Rangers of old, the Sather era, where if they have a first-round pick, which they normally trade away, if they don't, it's going to be towards the latter half of that first round. Let's see them get creative, because Rangers have done very well in years past in the latter half of the first round or in middle rounds. So I'm curious to see how the development is going to be for them and their scouting with making these type of picks again, and not having the focus for top 5 picks as they have had in previous years.
If you look at the first rounders they had before they started giving them away, you had Brady Shea, I think 28th overall in 2012. He's a top 4 defenseman in the league. And then, 2011, you get JT Miller, 15th overall. He's a top 6 forward in the league. And then 2010, of course, McElrath. That's a dud. There's no arguing there. But that was 10th overall. That was maybe a little bit too high for the Rangers. 2009, they get Chris Kreider, 19th overall.
Yep.
And that was actually when experts were saying that the best players on the board were Jacob Josephson and Jordan Schroeder.
Who and who?
Exactly. Josephson was drafted by the Devils, played a fair amount of games in the NHL, but went back to Europe. And Jordan Schroeder was, I think, drafted by the Canucks. He was basically a World Junior star. He led the World Juniors in scoring, I think, 3 years in a row, but never really got to showcase that in the NHL. And I think right now he plays for Jokerit in the KHL. So the Rangers picked the right player there. The Rangers got Chris Kreider, who is now on pace to score 50 goals this season. He's not going to get there, but he's on pace for it.
Yeah, he's going to get 49, obviously.
Oh, it's 49. I'll take it. Whatever, I'll take it.
I'll settle with it. Fine.
Only 3 players in Rangers history have scored 50 goals for us in a single season.
Yeah.
You know which 3 they are, right?
I can definitely say 2 to 3 off the top of my head.
So?
Graves.
Yeah.
Yager.
Yeah.
And I want to say the last one is Mr. Ranger.
Mr. Ranger. No, it's Rattel. Let me just.
Oh, Rattel. Okay.
Just to be safe. Sorry, Hatfield, 50.
Oh, okay. It was okay.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure I got the right name there, because
Gotcha.
I always mix up Hatfield and Rattel because I wasn't old enough to watch them play.
Yeah, I was off by a little bit.
To me, it's always Rod Gilbert, number 7, because his number was in the rafters ever since I watched as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 2 are Rattel and Hatfield, and I always forget which one was the center and which one was the other winger, and I always forget which one got the 50 goals and which one got the highest point per game average in a season.
Gotcha.
To me, Hatfield and Rattel are just 2 stars, but I don't know. I struggle keeping them apart in terms of what they accomplished, because they accomplished so much as a Ranger.
Oh,
But
I
yeah,
know. Yeah, we don't need that. That line was
no.
tremendous. That helped
Anyway,
build the foundation for
and
this
you
team.
know what? I'm going to say, look, I complain about this organization a lot because they make so many mistakes and sometimes they don't even try. The fact that they put Gilbert, Hatfield, and Rattel together in the rafters,
Is awesome.
that's a stroke of genius.
Yeah,
It may
keep
have been
that line
obvious.
together forever.
It may have been obvious, but that was the right thing to do. Only thing is, they maybe should have put the center in the middle because I think Hatfield is in the middle and Rattel's on the wing, as
Didn't
others
they?
on the right
I
side.
think I get what you're saying, but they did it in accordance with when they were actually given their retired numbers.
I thought they did it. No, no, that's not true because Rattel was retired first. So they so
Oh,
the so they do it in order of the numbers 7, 11, 19.
oh, okay. So they have a reasoning for it,
Yeah, it
regardless.
still makes sense, but
Yeah.
I'm still happy that those three numbers are separate from all the other numbers that are retired.
Yes. No, I
Uh,
agree. But Beer, before we expand on this tangent, I want to
yeah,
answer at least one or two more questions before we get to the upcoming
yeah,
schedule.
sure, yeah.
Raphael, thank you so much for the comment. Any chance we can package Kravtsov with a pick to get a solid mid-tier two-way forward in his late 20s? Good question. Now, this is something that I do feel can be somewhat feasible when you look at what the Rangers are looking to acquire. What's your take on this? I would say that, yeah, there's definitely a possibility that the Rangers could go down a route like this. I also know, however, that if they can rekindle that relationship with Vitali, then they will surely try to do so, given the fact that the Rangers have been struggling. The Rangers could use a Vitali Kravtsov type the years to come, where Dryden Hunt has been placed this season. For comparisons,
Hmm.
it's not like you trade Pavel Buchnevich away because you felt you had perfect depth at the right wing position or anything. So take it
Yeah.
away, Steven.
So if there are four scenarios on what to do with Kravtsov, here's how I would rank them. In fourth place would be trading him for a draft pick because at this point I don't think you're going to get more than a high second round pick. So that's like worst case scenario. In third place, I have trading for a similar prospect. And the reason I have that option also quite low is because you never know how that prospect's going to turn out. Now, in second place, I have trading Kravtsov as part of a package for an established player who can help you win. You're not going to get a star player, but like Raphael said, you're going to get maybe like a solid second line player, a Ryan Strome caliber player, if you will.
Yep.
My top option for Kravtsov is still to keep him, let him play, and let him show what he can do. And the talent's still there. We all know this. The longer this goes on, the less likely I consider that option. So if the Rangers have an opportunity to package him with maybe a pick and a player for someone who actually makes this team better in the long run, I'm all for it. Who that player is going to be, I mean, there's so many players in the league. It's difficult to say. The one player that I would love on this team is the Dallas Stars center Rope Hintz. It's probably
I was a big fan of Rupe Hintz. I don't know how he's doing this season, but from
it's
years
probably
past,
not going to happen. But I think Rope Hintz would be perfect for this team. Other players that I would love to acquire are players that really bring that pace. If there's one thing this team needs, it's the players that have the ability to skate into the zone cleanly. And I've been harping on this for weeks. We saw it against the LA Kings. Adrian Kempe and Rasmus Kupari did it time and time again against us. So if you acquire one of those, great.
Oh yeah, Hintz is having a roughly point per game this season. I
Yeah,
don't see him
I
being
mean
dealt.
it's difficult, but any player can be traded. You just have to offer enough to get him.
I agree with you in the sense that the Rangers are really going to start giving away assets and of significance.
You have
This
to.
is
You
the
have
type
so
of
many of them.
this is the type of route I want them to go down
Yeah.
versus say going for grizzled vets of rentals that who knows how long they're actually going to be on the club.
there's
you know?
there's no incentive to go for a guy like Joe Pavelski.
Yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
that it's interesting you bring Pavelski up because I had that conversation with my brother because he asked me about Pavelski and Giroux the other day, and he said, which one would I prefer? And I said, well, Pavelski. I'm like, Pavelski's older, but Pavelski, if you're trying to make an acquisition for someone to benefit you in playoffs, he is 1000% that guy. He has a net front presence like Kreider and is playing far above expectations for a guy that's like 37, 38 already. But in saying that, do you really want to cough up, even if it's a latter half first round pick? Do you really want to do that for someone that is not going to have a long lasting future on your club? I'm so against that Sather mentality because I was so used to it for really, I would say, a very, for my entire life as a Ranger fan up until they started the rebuild. And I'm sick of that notion. I feel like if you go back to that route at where the Rangers are today, I don't think it benefits your club enough to justify what you parted with. If this is a couple of years from now, maybe even next season, depending on how much the Rangers have progressed since then, that's a different discussion. There is always a time and a place to part ways with prospects and picks. I do not think that this is the time for that caliber of a player. I do think, however, it is the time if you're going after someone who's young and controllable and can be your long-lasting centerman like a Rupe Hintz. That's justifiable.
And for me, that's the thing. If the Rangers want to go after a guy at the deadline, I am okay with two scenarios. Either you go after a guy that doesn't cost you a first or a top prospect, like a middle six guy like Fiala, or Kalle Järnkrok, or I don't know, Arturi Lekkonen. I'm okay with that. You give up maybe a second, more likely a third round pick. You solidify your lineup so you don't have to rely on AHL call-ups to help you in the playoffs if you suffer one injury. I get that. That I'm on board with. I'm also on board with acquiring a player at the deadline where you do give up a first-round pick, where maybe you do give up a guy like Zach Jones, Nils Lundqvist, maybe Brennan Hoffman, maybe Will Cooley. But my condition is that it has to be a player that's under contract for a couple more years. Where you acquire a player at the deadline, yes, but he's going to be on your team for at least a couple more years, or at the very least, return something in the future if you do decide to trade him away. I am not in the mood to see Chris Drury trading away a first-round pick or one of those top assets for a guy that's only going to be here for 2 months. That I'm completely against. This team is not the 2015 Chicago Blackhawks, where you trade away a first-round pick for Antoine Vermette and you go all in. This team is not one player away from winning a cup. This team is one player away from making the second round, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that one. And again, the Rangers may prove us wrong this year, and I will be so happy if they do. I rather that we go in with low expectations and then, outplay what we expect. Because realistically, this is the beginning of their new era, if you will, right? With this core group. So, yeah, I agree with you on that one for sure. But now I think is a perfect time. Let's pivot and get into the upcoming schedule because by time next time we discuss things, the Rangers will have played 4 games. So I'm excited. Rangers have a bunch of games coming up, some big ones, a mix of different teams in the sense of, some very exciting teams, some teams that aren't so exciting, but still all teams that when the Rangers have played this year, outside of one, because they haven't played this one team, they've had some close games with. So starting off is tonight, the 19th, against the Toronto Maple Leafs at home. That's going to be a big game. Maple Leafs have had a very good season, very similar to the Rangers. They've had some very good goaltending too. And Jack Campbell, who I thought was a great pickup when they did it. And I preached to Leafs fans. I said, this is going to be your long-term starting goaltender. You're going to part ways with Frederik Andersen. It's going to happen. They didn't believe me. Of course, then it happened. And now Anderson's doing great things for the Carolina Hurricanes, who the Rangers will play for the first time this season on the 21st. Away in Carolina. That's going to be a huge game against all those former Rangers, more than I can count on my hand right now, literally. And then they have a back-to-back. Then they go back home on the 22nd against the Arizona Coyotes, who the Rangers should not have had nearly as close games against this season as they have. And then they finish off things before we discuss again on the 24th, that being against the LA Kings at home. Rangers looking to rebound after losing against the Kings in LA just a couple of days ago, back on the 10th. So, Steven, 4 games coming up, very interesting games. They all have, their own unique aspect to them. I'll let you go first, considering you technically won the belt, if you will. So,
what do you mean technically? No, I won the belt.
Yes,
there's no technicality.
Yes. Same way that jinxes don't exist, right? Get out of here. Just make your pick.
Well, jinxes don't exist. I've proven that.
Steven,
I've proven that more than once. So first of all, if people go to the game against the LA Kings, keep an eye on Adrian Kempe, please.
I've always liked Kempe.
He's a delight to watch.
Yeah.
Also, Toronto Maple Leafs goaltender Campbell.
Yep.
You know what fans chant when he makes a save?
Soup.
It's amazing. I love it. Anyway, so Maple Leafs, Hurricanes, Coyotes, Kings. Oof. I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna be positive for once. I'm gonna go 2-1-1.
Oh, that's what I was gonna pick. All right. All right. 2-1-1. Shit. Let me think for a second.
This is taking way too long. Come on.
I know. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go 3-1. Gonna go 3-1.
3-1-0. All right.
I'm gonna stay on the optimistic side as well. All right, you pick the amount of goals you think the Rangers are gonna score.
4 games. They do play the Coyotes at home. That's a tough one. 4 games. I'm gonna go with 12.
Ooh, perfect. I was gonna take the over, so I'll just go 13. You say me there. I think you went a little generous for a team that, when we look at the Rangers, going back to the second at Tampa, they scored 4 goals. 4 goals. 4 goals.
How many goals did they score in the last 4 games?
Last 4 games, they've scored
11.
I'm sorry. Yeah, last 4 they've scored 11. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go 13. Yep.
All right.
Awesome.
We'll see if you can retake the belt. I don't think you're going to, but
okay. Well, crazier things have happened. I'm feeling juiced up. A big UFC fight card is happening this weekend, so I'm ready to win the championship. It's got to happen.
Listen, I have watched one UFC fight ever, and I was so pissed off because my friends and I stayed up until 4, and it was over in 12 seconds.
Was that the McGregor fight?
No, it wasn't Conor McGregor. It was some Hispanic guy who got knocked out.
Okay, yeah, it happens.
Maybe it was McGregor, but the guy that was knocked out was a Hispanic guy, I think.
Okay, well, he did knock out Jose Aldo just in a couple seconds.
That's the one. Yes, Aldo. Yep. That's the one.
That was like the most iconic win of Conor's career to this point. Because
cannot believe we stayed up until 5 a.m.
You don't understand how much history you witnessed in that fight, so don't be pissed off.
We didn't because we were playing FIFA until like 4:55 a.m.
Oh, so you're a schmuck. You just wait till the main event, like the actual main fight, not even the main card, just the last fight.
I didn't even pay for it. I just found the stream online.
All right, fair enough. Okay. Now to wrap things up, it is episode 45, which means
how many players can you name?
There was one that popped in my head that wasn't in my head because you named him earlier. That is Aaron Asham. I remember Aaron Asham, the Metropolitan great. He played literally in every team on the
only player to play for all 5 teams in the Atlantic Division.
That's crazy. So crazy. So Aaron Asham, Brain Schneider.
Thank God you got that one.
And the one that I think would stump a lot of Ranger fans, but I liked him when he was a Ranger. I don't know why. Former Shark great James Shepard.
James Shepard, who now plays in Vienna, by the way, for the Vienna Capitals.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah, I cannot believe I missed that by like a couple of months.
Wow. All right,
go ahead. The last Ranger to play for the Vienna Capitals before James Shepard was a goalie, by the way. with the
Okay.
same initials as Matt Zuccarello and Mika Zibanejad.
Wait. Who?
Matt Zaba.
I I would not have known that.
Anyway, so players that play with number 45 for the Rangers. I'm going to start off by saying not Capo Caco, because Capo Caco used it in the preseason. It's not an official game. It doesn't count.
I'm glad I didn't
It's,
say him because I was contemplating it.
it's Braden Schneider, Magnus Hellberg,
Oh, Hellberg. Wow.
James Shepard, Aaron Asham, Chris Newberry, who I also mentioned, and you didn't write that one
I
down.
don't know Newberry well enough to know that.
Jody Shelley, Dmitry Kalinin, Steve Valiquette. Yep, in 2003, 2004.
Okay.
And the first Ranger to ever wear number 45 before he switched to number 5. He wore number 45 for only 5 games, Dale Purinton.
Interesting. Yeah, Valley. I should have known that one. That's the only one that kind of bothers me that I didn't have him on top of my head.
Valiquette started out as number 35 for the Islanders, then went to number 40 for the Oilers, and then he went to 45 for the Rangers, and then the following, after the lockout, he changed to 40.
Yeah, because I don't remember Valley as 45.
No. So just to check, in 03, 04, which player had number 40 that blocked him from getting his number? Jussi Markkanen. All right. Interesting.
Breaking news right as we end episode 45 of Rangers Review.
Again?
Alexi Lafreniere has cleared COVID protocol, and Morgan Barron has been assigned to the taxi squad. So both a positive and a negative simultaneously. And that is where we are going to finish off this episode. So I want to thank everyone so much for chiming in wherever you get your podcast, whether you listen live here or on replay. Thank you guys so much for chiming in.
One more thing, please.
Go ahead, Steven.
Greg McKegg has bigger plot armor than Frodo in Lord of the Rings.
And that'll do it, folks. All right, we'll be back here probably next Tuesday or Wednesday. I do have a hectic schedule this upcoming week, so we'll see when we get it, but we'll definitely make sure to record prior to the Columbus and Minnesota and Seattle games. So thank you again, folks. Always appreciate everyone's support wherever you get your podcast. Leave a nice review if you would be so inclined, if you enjoyed episode 45 of Rangers Review. And that'll be it. All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Steven, let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.